People pleasing is a dysfunctional pattern that you are stuck in. It's a dysfunctional pattern that's causing you to feel extreme resentment with all your relationships around you because you are constantly pouring into other people and you're never pouring into yourself. It's making you feel like you're not good enough because you can't seem to understand why everybody else around you won't give you the same value and pour into you just as much as you're pouring into them. It's causing you to feel empty inside. Let's be honest, you feel like you have this big, empty, gaping hole in your chest that's just never full. And you constantly feel empty and you constantly feel sad and stuck. And people pleasing is preventing you from actually taking care of your health. And it's keeping you stuck in dysfunctional health patterns and causing you to feel tired so that you can't go and pursue the goals and dreams that you have and you want to pursue. If you're new to this channel, my name is Dr. Basleen Atley. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapy certified naturopathic doctor, and I teach women how to heal their brain so they can elevate their self-worth and build the life of their dreams. People pleasing is a huge dysfunctional pattern I see with a lot of the women that I work with. And a lot of them can't seem to understand, why am I like this? How did I become like this? And that's what this video is about. I want to break down where this dysfunctional pattern stems from, because when we can get a deep understanding of why we are the way that we are, it becomes so much easier to be able to build the appropriate strategies around it, because you know exactly where all of this is stemming from and coming from. People pleasing is a pattern that I was stuck in for a very, very long time in my life. I had chronic depression for 5 years. I had anxiety, you name it with depression, anxiety, I had it and I dealt with it and went through it. And for a very, very long time, I would just cater to everybody else around me. I remember in high school, one of my friends at that time actually came up to me and said, Basleen, you're so easy to take advantage of. You're just too nice. And I was like, I don't know how to take that. Thank you. I'm depressed and you say this and great. I feel so much better about myself. High school friendship, so dysfunctional at that time. But I was really stuck in this pattern for a very long time. And I remember I would attract the worst relationships into my life. And I was constantly in those relationships where I just was overgiving. And I was giving so much to these other men and people around me, and I would just get none of it back. And here's the thing, right? When you get stuck in this cycle of overgiving, it becomes so hard to pull back. And I know that you relate to that. A part of you knows that, oh, I should pull back. I am giving too much. But it just feels so hard to pull back because you feel bad. And I found myself stuck in that cycle for a very, very long time. There was this nagging intuitive voice inside me that was like, Basleen, stop overgiving. What the hell are you doing? But it became so hard for me to pull back because every time I did that, I felt so bad. I felt guilty. I felt like I wasn't a good person. And worst of all, I felt like these people would leave me. I felt like if I didn't overgive, if I didn't do everything in my power to make this person in front of me feel as good as possible, then I've failed and they're going to leave me, right? Really, really deep abandonment issues. And I had those abandonment issues. And so much of that stemmed from this. And this is why I started to people please. And so this, I attracted the worst relationships. This took away time and energy for me to support myself and my health because I was always at everybody else's beck and call, and it was exhausting. It was so exhausting just being that one person who was always there for everybody else around her, right? Always replying to the messages, always picking up the phone calls, always dropping everything and being there for my friends. It took away so much time and energy from the things that I actually wanted to work on and pursue. And I found myself really sacrificing areas of my health and my life just so that I could be there for everybody else around me. And then what would happen is that I would start fights. I would start fights with people. I would start fights with family members and friends. And this is because I had so much resentment pent up inside me because I felt like I was constantly being there for everybody else, but I wasn't getting that same love back, those same check-ins, the same things back to me. I started to just low-key hate everybody else. But really, if I'm being honest, it was a hatred of myself. I hated myself. I hated myself and I hated the fact that I couldn't control my ability to overgive and that I couldn't control and be choosy about who I overgave to. And I was just overgiving, it's kind of being at the strip club and you're just like shooting out money. That was me with like the overgiving and all the action steps that I was doing. And I feel like you might relate to that, right? This like deep need and desire to overgive, and you don't feel fully satisfied until you have, and then you do it, but then you still feel guilty and angry. Because the truth is that, let's be honest, people aren't even giving to you a quarter of what you're giving out to them. The other thing to keep in mind too is that you might not even give other people the opportunity to be able to give to you. Self-sabotage, right? We don't open ourselves up enough to receive, even though we're constantly giving. So many different ways as to how this shows up. Ultimately, it's a very dysfunctional pattern. It's exhausting. And you really have to take note of how it's showing up in your life, because it manifests in so many different ways. One of the things that I started really doing that switched things up for me is I started tuning into and asking myself, am I doing this because I actually want to do it? Or am I doing this because I'm people pleasing and I'm trying to overachieve in this area, right? That's the thing too. I was such an overachiever in everything. So of course, naturally I became an overachiever with all of my relationships. And that looked like people pleasing. That looked like never sharing my opinions of what I wanted. That's such a big one, right? Your opinion matters. It's valid. But when we people please and people ask us our opinion about something, we're always just say, whatever, who cares? Whatever you want. Like whatever you want. I'm cool with whatever you want. I'm easygoing. Oh my God. How many times have you said that, especially in relationships? I cannot tell you the amount of times, a guy might ask me like, oh, where do you want to go out to eat? And I'd be like, oh, I'm so chill. I'm so easygoing. And don't get me wrong, I still feel like I am, but like, I'm not that easygoing. I have opinions. I have things I want to share, and I will. And so how many times have you said that? Have you said like, oh, I'm so chill, I'm so easygoing, and made it seem like you're just not a person who has any sort of valid opinions or anything, good to share, which is not true at all, right? That's what people pleasing looks like. It looks like you pushing down your needs just so the needs of everybody else can be accommodated. And do you know where this comes from? You know where people pleasing comes from? It comes from extremely low self-worth. People pleasing is a dysfunctional pattern that develops as a result of low self-worth because we have abandonment issues. If we've ever experienced any sort of abandonment in our childhood, and this, again, that ranges, it could range, right? There are different ranges of that. I've worked with so many women, and it can be more severe, less severe. There's so many different ranges and situations and scenarios as to where this abandonment issue stems from. But what essentially ends up happening is that you have this experience of feeling abandoned. It's freaking terrifying as a child. And so the pattern that you learn to develop in order to make sure that you never become abandoned again is to people please. Because if you cater to everybody else, if you do everything that you can for them and then add, 100 to that, if you never share your needs and opinions, if you're always accommodating to them, then other people will not leave you. And we know as adults that is not true. We know that you could people please, you could be and be so accommodating and do everything for the other person, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stay. I definitely now know that as an adult. And so people pleasing doesn't guarantee that people won't leave you. And so if it doesn't guarantee people won't leave you, then why people please in the first place? That's going to be a whole other video where I break down how do you actually break out of this cycle of people pleasing. But really, this is where people pleasing stems from. And so you develop this dysfunctional pattern, and it works for a little while in your childhood. But as you get older, as you enter the world, as you build your life, it starts to become an extremely dysfunctional pattern that leads to anxious attachment style, usually, and a lot of anxious relationships and situations that we don't feel too good in. And the thing too is that when we end up people pleasing, when we end up accommodating ourselves to meet the needs for other people and drop our own needs, we abandon ourselves. And I think that is the most powerful truth that comes out of this, is that we become so scared of other people abandoning us that we completely abandon ourselves and our needs to make sure that we can accommodate for them. And this actually takes us further away from ourselves. This actually destroys our self-esteem and self-confidence, and ultimately makes us feel awful about ourselves. And if you want to have great brain health, and if you ultimately want to feel good at the end of the day, people pleasing is a pattern that you have to break out of. And you break out of it by stopping abandoning yourself for the needs of other people. That's how you do that. And you tune in and ask yourself, because I promise you, when you do this, when you tune in and ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to do this? Or am I doing this because I feel like I need to people please? And by doing this, am I going to abandon my needs and what I really want in this moment? And if the answer to that is yes, then you know you're people pleasing. At any point, if you're abandoning yourself and your needs for other people, you're starting to people please. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about compromise. Obviously, in relationships, you're not going to always 100% get what you want, but I'm talking about this being a repetitive pattern. Are you repetitively dropping your needs for the needs of other people? Again, sometimes we're going to have to. We compromise. We all do it. It's okay. But if you're doing it over and over and over again, and as a result of it, you're feeling resentment and you're noticing people aren't pouring into you as much as you are pouring into them, because let's be honest, they never will, you need to recheck this dysfunctional pattern. And you need to start looking at, why am I doing what I am doing? Am I scared this person is going to leave me? Am I sending this text message because I'm scared this person's going to leave me, or do I want to check in on them? Am I answering this phone call because I feel like if I feel bad if I don't answer this phone call, I feel like I'm not a good person? You know, that's people-pleasing tendencies coming out. Or do I want to check this phone call because I actually have time and I'm not working on something important and I can make time and room and space for this phone call right now? See that difference? It's a big difference. It's not even like a little subtle difference. It's a big difference. The intention behind these actions ultimately impact us. That's how actions impact us. It's the intention behind them. You can pick up a phone call because you actually have time for it, or you can pick up a phone call because you have abandonment issues and you're people pleasing. And that completely changes up how the situation affects you. Because if you pick up that phone call while you're doing something really important, but it's those people-pleasing tendencies coming out, then you're gonna end that phone call and you're gonna be really angry at yourself. You're gonna be really angry at that person because it feels like they took away your focus, and you're angry at yourself for even answering that phone call. Versus if you take a step back and ask yourself, do I actually have time and space and room for this? You can then think about if this is something that you actually want to do, and then you don't feel resentment, because if you actually have time for it, you pick up and you feel okay about it because this person didn't take away from your focus, or you decide that no, actually, I don't have time and room and space for this. That difference changes everything. So this is why people pleasing happens. This is where it comes from. Of course, not everybody's people pleasing might be this exact same pattern away, but this is a huge reason why it shows up. People pleasing has just become this way that you found to cope with life. And I think that's the most important thing. Whenever I work with the women that I work with, I literally break apart their whole identity. That's our whole first 1 to 2 sessions is becoming aware of how they're staying stuck. And when you find out how you're staying stuck, why you're staying stuck, it's like the identity of who you were. I just take like a sledgehammer and we both just, boom, break it apart and open to see what's actually there. And it's hard. It's so hard to see what's actually there. And it can be disheartening, right? When you realize that, like, shoot, I'm totally people pleasing because I'm afraid to lose people around me and I have really deep abandonment issues. That's hard because it makes you feel sad. It makes you feel so sad. And it makes you wish that things were different. But here's the thing, things aren't different. And the beautiful thing is that you know now why. And now it's about making sure that you don't abandon yourself to meet the needs for others. And that's how you truly and really overcome this in a powerful, powerful way. So this is how you do it. If you're really ready to kind of break out of these people-pleasing tendencies and you're just like, I'm ready to be in a place to build amazing brain health, use the link below to book a free assessment. Let's help you elevate your self-worth so that you can live the life of your dreams because you deserve it.